First of all, I would like to thank you for this important webinar, and that you thought it was important that a voice from Denmark is represented. It is truly not with any kind of pride that I have agreed to participate, but it is important for refugees throughout whole Europe, I believe, that there is an international focus now on the fact that something is truly rotten in Denmark with the politics here. For refugees in all Scandinavian countries, it is important that there is an international resistance and focus on Denmark from now. My name is Lene Kjær, and since 2014, I have been dealing with refugees and mainly rejected refugees from Denmark. My main focus has been to help the many rejected refugees from Denmark in other countries such as Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. In addition, as one of very few in Denmark, I have been working with the deportation prison Ellebæk, where a lot of organs, unfortunately, is ending up. And I have been a visiting friend from prisoners since 2015. In the work that has been more than full-time for 6 years, the organs have been the population group I have had the most focus on, simply because they get imprisoned and deported immediately after rejections if we do not help them. Denmark has some of Europe's lowest recognition rates for a large number of population groups, including organs. And it is extremely difficult to obtain asylum in Denmark. More than 50% of all asylum cases are decided on people's credibility, and it takes very little to be declared untrustworthy here. The approach of the authorities is that applicants are stressed and confused in interviews until small divergent information makes it possible to give rejection by stating that the applicants are untrustworthy. In general, the refugee board only grants asylum in about 70% of all refusals from the Danish Immigration Service. Furthermore, for organs, many who get recognized and need for personal protection are rejected with reference to internal flight alternatives. Furthermore, a large number of the organ cases have been appealed to the UN, and where the UN has criticized Denmark. But since 2015, Denmark has had an attitude where the authorities does not comply with UN critique and maintains rejections despite this. It has become mainstream in Denmark with a political attitude that the UN are kings without land who should not interfere in Danish affairs. If I have to give a brief status of the organs in Denmark, we only have about 200 organ asylum seekers left in Denmark who are awaiting decisions. In addition, there is a large group that I'm currently trying to help get out of their Dublin issues. Most of these are in church asylum in Germany or awaiting church asylum. It is mainly families with children. And we also have a huge group of single men, single boys on the street in Paris, and a lot of young men in Spain and Italy. Unfortunately, there is also a group of organs of about 15 people who are in custody in Ellebæk and have been that since December 2019 due to the pandemic, where it has not been possible to deport them. The latest news about this group is that the authorities have decided by law that they will be forcibly tested for COVID. so we are able to deport them. A lawyer have made complaints about this, so at the moment we do not know if we will be able to deport them or not. But in generally, it's very concerning that most people have been there for nearly 18 months now, regardless of whether they are deported or not. They will be truly broke down and traumatized by such a long stay in Ellebæk. The overall conditions in Ellebæk, which is actually made as a deport prison for non-criminal people, are very worrying, and it is conditions which you would never see in Denmark used for criminal people. In my work with the place, I have experienced that people break down to a degree where they get trauma for the rest of their lives only by staying there few months. There are many examples of violence and use of force by prison staff, people being denied medical care, even painkillers, and the overall conditions are just horrible. There are many attempts of suicide and many examples where people are getting psychotic in these conditions. In February 2020, the European Committee Against Torture made a report which stated that Ellebæk is some of the worst conditions they have ever seen in Europe. They directly claimed that the overall conditions in Ellebæk is not for human beings, and they stated that the conditions should be rectified within 3 months, and that they preferred that a highly developed country as Denmark close this place. Denmark's response to the European Committee Against Torture has been that they disagree with the report and that Ellebæk should in no way be a nice place, as the intention is to motivate people to go home. The conditions remain inhumane, very worrying, and must be equated with torture. I think everyone has noticed that Denmark is again over on all international front pages by the fact that the authorities have started to revoke residence on Syrians. This issue is actually not new. I have been working on the Syrian cases for more than a year, but like everything else, it has been difficult to get any kind of focus on this. The first Syrians were deprived of their residence in December 2019. In general, it is a single young woman, the elderly and sick people, as well as single mothers with children who are affected, at whom the Danish authorities will send back to rebuild Syria with unsubstantiated reports. 11 out of 12 sources used in the Danish reports feel abused and misinterpreted. Nevertheless, and despite great international criticism, the Danish authorities maintain that Syria is safe. The Syrians are also not the first group to be exposed to this policy, where Denmark withdraw residents on a specific population group. In 2018, Somalis in Denmark were exposed to the same tactics. The Danish authorities prepared a report stating that Mogadishu is safe and thousands of Somalis in Denmark lost their residence. At the same time, a secret agreement was made with Somalia, where the Danish authorities stated that they was not able that they was now able to deport to Somalia, an agreement that no one can gain insight into, and it must be questioned whether it exists at all. People who get deported disappear at the airport in Mogadishu, and it looks like they are being imprisoned by the authorities in Somalia. Just a month ago, a young man was forcibly deported after a year in Ellebæk. He disappeared on arrival in Mogadishu. It seems that this withdrawal of residents is a strategy from the Danish authorities, because they do not want the Syrians to be in Denmark for so long that, according to international standards, were entitled to permanent residence due to their connection to Denmark. In a completely new agreement between the government and other parties, it is noted that the Danish government has a duty to convene a meeting before the summer holidays, where it must be discussed how the Danish authorities can organize withdrawal of residency to ensure that temporary stays do not occur permanent residence. Denmark has reached a point where it is not a question on whether there is a real need for protection, but where it is a matter of getting as many people as possible out of our country before they have the right to permanent residence. Denmark is already the only country we should be able, Denmark is already the only country where it is almost impossible to obtain Danish citizenship, and where it is more than difficult to obtain permanent residence. All refugees with residence live in an ongoing stressful situation where they do not know if they are the next to have their residence withdrawn. And to understand why foreign policy in Denmark has become that strict, you must understand the society and the mentality of the Danes. To outsiders, it may look like we are a nation full of right-wing nationalists, but that is not the truth. The Danish right wing has no greater support than it's seen in Germany, Norway, and Sweden. And generally, immigration policy has always been a hot topic in elections in Denmark. But until the start of the refugee crisis and the election in 2015, hate speech and discrimination was a rhetoric that was only heard from the Danish People Party. But with the refugee crisis and the election in 2015, when Inger Støjberg became integration minister, hate speech has become mainstream, and the parties that claim to be against have been more than silent. In the same way, the large group of Danes who are truly against this policy have not spoken out against the rhetoric. At the start of the refugee crisis, a movement arose in Denmark, which was the kind people who welcomed refugees with joy. It was around 300,000 people who stand up to help all over the country. There's a lot of great to be said about this movement, which broke out across the whole country and which really welcomed refugees, helped them with integration and so on. But it was very clear from the beginning that it was expected that to be a member of this movement, you needed to be apolitical and just friendly. Hate speech was not answered. It was believed that the hate could be silenced with kindness, love, and cake. That's how the Danes think. This is generally a very typical course of actions for Danes. It is a mentality that is best described with the Danish word hygge, which is difficult to translate. But it is about the Danes generally being a people who appreciate having a nice and cozy time in their free time. You should not make demands on people, and it is preferred that you do not talk about topics that give a bad conscience. There are no protests, and Danes suffering from a very naive trust in their authorities and politicians. You can best exhibit this failure from the Danes by comparing with the Norwegian people. From the beginning of the refugee crisis, where Denmark introduced one crazy law after another, took refugees' belongings, built tent camps, and did everything to make life as intolerable as possible for refugees. It was not without the Norwegian Minister of Immigration tried to cope with the Danish madness. But the Norwegians, unlike the Danes, have a strong activist environment on the left wing, which strongly and clearly spoke out and protested. Meanwhile, the Danes were silent and friendly. Unfortunately, very, very few people in Denmark have protested clearly and worked hard to help the many rejected people. It seems now that the Danes are slowly starting to wake up to protest, but I am more than afraid that it is too late. But Denmark is now the only country in the world to have declared Syria safe under a social democratic lead government. Shows the failure of the entire Danish people, I believe. And I'm afraid it is the snowball that's got so big that nothing can stop it. The Nordic values, which rely on human rights, have been totally destroyed by Denmark and the lack of resistance from the Danes. The latest madness from Denmark is that the Danish Minister of Integration has just put forward a proposal that asylum seekers should in future be placed in a third country. And at the same time, he has been in wonder to enter into an agreement. It seems that Danish politics is an eternal race to the bottom, where there is no bottom at all. I don't know what else to say about it. So it's just an ongoing, with more and more strict politics. And it's very, very, very difficult to help people here and help the refugees. If I don't know, do I have more time back?
It's just 5 minutes you have.
Just 5 minutes, yes.
Thank you.
One more thing which have been really, really shamefully in all this work I have had is that asylum seekers and rejected asylum seekers in Denmark is actually denied medical care. We have truly, truly many really sick people who when they get into Germany, they get immediately into hospitals. We have people who are dying because they didn't get the medical care. I don't know if you remember the case of Samina Vasili, which was this old Afghan woman. She lay in her bed 24/7. She's suffering from dementia. She cannot even eat or anything herself. And they wanted to deport her. And her case is still ongoing, and her daughter is still fighting with the Danish authorities about medical care, about anything for her old mother who cannot do anything. And it's so shamefully that that not even very, very sick people get help here. So, yeah, I don't know what more to say about my country.